it's Cordelia, the creative educator. Today we're going to talk all about reading. Now, reading is a life skill, but a lot of parents and even children forget to understand why it is so important to begin reading with their children from home from a young age. So I'm going to give you a little bit of tips about what you can do without spending loads and loads of money, and also I'm going to talk about the importance of reading from a younger age to support your child. So let's start with a few tips of mine which can support you and your child to support them with reading. Now, number one, the most important in fact, is to start from a young age. So as soon as your child is actually let's go back. Let's go back even further. When my daughter, in fact, when all my children were in the room, I used to read to them. I used to just, pop out a little book, something that I enjoyed. It didn't have to be a baby book because they weren't born yet, but a little book, and I just simply read to them. So they just got used to sort of hearing the energy of reading. When they were out, that sounds awful, but when they were actually born, after they were born, I would read to them every night. And yes, I know they didn't understand the words that I was using or the context or anything like that. But again, it was just getting them used to calming them down and simply just listening to my voice. And it was a nice experience for them, and it really helped them sort of settle into bedtime as well. As they got older, sort of toddler stage, we used to get the flashcards out, the phonic cards out. So we'd start with just singular letters, A, B, B, so on and so forth. We used to do this in quite a fun way. So I'd get little wooden letters or cards that they could use, and we put them on the floor. They used to run after them, chase them, and I used to probably call them out. They'd find the ones that I was referring to. So we used to do it in a nice, fun, interactive way. Even when we were traveling in the car, we used to do little fun games like, how do you spell Kuata? Or what does Kuata sound like? Or, what word does it make? So lots of fun little things. It wasn't always on paper. Sometimes it was just simply verbally, but lots of ways to just integrate learning into everyday life. So there was that. So we'd start to develop that interest. And as soon as they could read, they started reading every single day. Even we start with early reading books. So really simple phonetical books. And then as they progress, they wanted to read the Harry Potters and so on and so forth, because there was that interest and that love for reading, which was developed from a really young age. Now, a lot of you might think, yeah, but they're going to read anyway. Why is it so important? Lo and behold, those that can actually pronounce words correctly and sort of use the information that's in their brain and actually express it well, through verbally, usually get on better in life. Now, this doesn't mean that it just needs to be for a test or an exam that's coming up. It's also a life skill. The better you can present yourself, the better you can talk, the more confidently you can hold yourself to a greater esteem. It actually, there's been lots of tests and such about it, but those that can read better and talk better and are quite confident, usually they get on better in life. So forget about just tests, forget about the A's and the 9s and, scoring great on an exam. It's actually a life skill which will support them throughout their lives, and it's never ending. And then, of course, we want to help them to develop reading as an interest as well. So reading magazines, newspapers, books. It doesn't always have to be something that's written in a book. It can be an article or a magazine or something like that, something that just sort of piques their interest. Maybe if they're into football, maybe try a football magazine. I know they've got something called the Junior Weekly, I believe it is now, this great magazine for kids that they can actually read, and it's all about things that are taking place in this world, and it's written for kids as well. So it's always finding things that work for our children, not necessarily work for us, but work for our children, finding out what they like, what their interests are, and then sort of embedding of using that to support their learning. So number one, start from a really early age, as young as possible. Do not force them, because when you force them, sometimes they can switch off and they don't want to do it because it's boring. And what I do as well, sometimes when I have those moments, I'm a human being and my kids are human beings too, but sometimes they'll have these moments where they're like, I don't want to read. But what I do say is, that's fine. If you want to go on your tablet or if you want to go on the phone for a little bit, no problem. You can do that all day, every day. But guess what? You got to do your reading first. And then we have time sessions. So I might give them 15 minutes on their tablet, or maybe depending on if they're watching a movie or anything like that. But usually it's about 15 minutes, half an hour, but really short bursts, because what I don't want them to do is to become reliant upon a screen, reliant upon using technology all the time. I want them to also use their brains to think and get out Legos, and use and play with wooden toys, and use Play-Doh and all of that wonderful and all of that sort of stuff, because that is where the real thinking takes part and takes place. And obviously through creativity, we can actually expose them to a wider range of things, and we can also make learning enjoyable and fun for children as well, which is exactly what we want to do. We want to make it fun, engaging, and interesting, because that will pique their interest more. They'll retain more information. They'll want to do the learning as well, which is really important, and they'll stay on task for a much longer period of time as well. So keep it interesting, keep it engaging, keep it creative, mix it up a little bit, sometimes in the car, sometimes verbally, sometimes written down. Mix it up, and also make sure that you're not forcing them. If you can see that they're getting really irritated or agitated, take a brain break. That's what we call it anyway. We say to the kids, do you need a brain break? And if they need a brain break, they can go run outside in the garden, or they can go and play with the Lego for 5 minutes, and we'll just come back to it. And usually after they've had that little bit of a brain break, they're ready and raring to go, because they know that they've had that brain break, but they've also got like a bit of a challenge waiting for them as well. So we need to mix learning up. If it's stagnant and it's for an hour, and they know that they have to sit there for an hour and essentially write on a piece of paper, how boring can it get? So to my lovelies, make sure that your child is reading from a really early age. It's not all about tests. It's an everyday life skill which we can support them to develop from a young age. Keep it engaging, interesting, and make your child an enthusiastic reader. I always say to my children, readers are leaders, because they indeed are. So keep them reading. If you don't have many books around, what we do, and what I've started to do actually, is jump to the library, because I noticed I was spending so much money on books. My daughter, she was going through books so fast. It was crazy. And I was realising that I'm spending like about £50 a month on books, and some of the books she'd read about 3, 4, 5 times, but it was also the vocabulary. So because I wanted to continue to introduce her to new vocabulary, it was important that she didn't just read the same book over and over and over again. So I decided that once a month we'll pop to the library, get some new books, bring them back home, they could read them, and then we sort of change our books every month or so, depending on how busy our schedule is, really. So use a library. It's a fantastic resource if you've got one close by to you. But that is it for now. It's Cordelia, the Creative Educator. I really hope that helped. Remember, readers are leaders. Get them reading as soon as possible, and I will see you on the next one.